I wouldn't be who I am without the blessing of SSC, the blessing of Balmikas, the blessing of being involved in so many service projects, and to be exposed to amazing devotees of Bhagwan from a very early young age was very influential in my life. And so, with that brief background, I want to thank Sister again for the loving invitation. And love is such a dear topic to everyone. And it's also one of the most profound and mysterious things that we could ever grapple with. I don't think anybody could do justice explaining what this is. However, I think all of us have experienced in some form or another, either from our parents, from our teachers, and from those that really showered love on us, including Bhagwan himself in his lovely form. So these are a few reflections that are formed through experience, through reading of Swami's teachings, and it's, I would say, a very amateur attempt at describing and sharing what this phenomenon is that we all put a label and say this is love, right? So with that safe harbor statement, let me share a few slides and my apologies. So the topic is love is all, and we'll explore what this is. And please stay with me. And if there is a way to interact on chat or other means, please feel free to do so. So the very purpose of creation is love. And Bhagwan has said that he separated himself from himself to become this creation. And why is that so? It is to share love, right? And in a way, Bhagwan is saying he was lonely and there was no one to share love with. And therefore, he had to create himself in another form that's become this huge, huge multiplicity that we call the universe, right? And it is for this very, very, very basic reason to give love, to receive love. And the whole universe is nothing but a dance of love that speaks to this beautiful sentiment that Swami himself shared with all of us. I separated myself from myself to love myself, right? So that is the power behind the creation of the universe. And I would be bold enough to say that that is the power behind anything that we do, to create, to express. It all comes from this very basic phenomenon within us called love, right? Now, one of the characteristics of love is that there is no reason, there is no season, as Swami beautifully sang. Love is my form, truth is my breath, no reason for love, no season for love. So, how would you describe such a phenomenon other than by experience? And we're lucky to have the stories of those that have loved different forms of God and how that love is expressed in multitudes of forms. So there is no one fixed template to express love, either from devotee to God or from God to devotee. Right? So there was this hunter called Kannappan, and he performed the worship of the lingam, which is revered as a form of Shiva, with what he thought was the best offering. This was meat and flowers, etc., etc., not the things that were typically used to offer as as an offering to the deity. And this is something that he would do day in and day out because that was his diet, uh, meat and so on. And he did that with so much love for the form of Shiva that he adored. And one day, when he came to make the offering, he found that the eye of the lingam was bleeding, and therefore he couldn't bear the sight that his beloved, to say the least, was bleeding in the eye. And he gouged one of his eyes to transplant that eye that he gouged out into the eye that was bleeding in the lingam. And once he transplanted his eye into the lingam, the bleeding stopped. And momentarily he was satisfied, but that was not the end of it. The other eye of the lingam started bleeding, and he decided that he was going to gouge his second eye and transplant that to the lingam. And when he was proceeding to do that, Shiva appeared out of the lingam, prevented him from gouging his second eye. Pleased with his devotion, he restored the eye that he had gouged and donated to the lingam. So this is signifies that love is blind when there is this purity of selflessness attached to it. So there's no template to express this love. There is no reason, and there is no season, and really it is love for love's sake. And that's the beauty of this pure selfless love. Now we've seen how powerful love is, that Kannappan even went to the extent of taking out both his eyes to prevent the bleeding of the eyes of the lingam. So Swami once demonstrated this power of love to a devotee by saying that any being, even an object, will respond to love. Because love is so powerful that when that object receives the love, whether it's living or non living, it will respond in its own way to the love that you have showered on it. As he held this rosebud with a lot of love, and within seconds and minutes, it started blossoming. And not only that, he said, if you do this, it's not that Swami alone has this power. Every devotee has this power to shower love and see the impact of this love on this living object or a non living object. So, a friend of mine in Atlanta was narrating this story to his child, and the child asked him, Dad, is this really true? Is it really true that the rosebud opens if you shower a lot of love? And he knew that this story was true, so he told, son, it is true that love is in fact so powerful. So the child took his dad's word for it, and he experimented with the flowers in his backyard that were yet to bloom. And even though it was not within seconds or minutes, it bloomed within like a day or so, really quick. So he knew that this is indeed true, that love has this power and it'll elicit a response from those that you shower love on. Now, where is this love? Is it is it coming from the outside and therefore we experience, which seems to be the case? If you look at the example that we shared just now with the rosebud, or is it that it comes from within? And to dive into this idea, I just want to share what the dog does. And this is again an analogy shared by Swami. So the dog chews on the bone and really enjoys the bone, thinking that the enjoyment is due to the bone. However, the fact is that when it bites hard on the bone, the gums of the dog bleed, and as it's tasting its own blood, it's lulled into thinking that it is, in fact, coming from the bone and not from its own gums. In other words, it is enjoying its own and not something that's given by the bone to the dog. Right? And Swami often says that everything is a reflection and a reaction to what's already within. Right? And resound. He says there's three things: reflection, reaction, and resound. So take a scenario where an adult is showering love on a child. The child simply exists. The child is an embodiment of purity, innocence. It doesn't know how to communicate, but the adult is showering love on this child and is deluded into thinking that the child is showering love on the adult, on them, right? So I'll submit to you that what the adult experiences is nothing but love that's coming from within, and it's flooding the adult's awareness, and that's what the adult experiences. It's not something coming from the outside, but from within, right? So that's a bit of a contrast to what we shared earlier with the rosebud, that we have this inherent capacity to draw out the love from within to an external object or a person. And when it floods our awareness, we experience the sweetness of it. It is coming from within. So, yes, there is love inherent everywhere. Wherever there is God, there is love. And you could say that there is love surrounding us. But one that impacts us is what comes from within. And when we become aware of that coming from within, we almost always attribute it to as coming from the outside. But in reality, we are tapping into what's already within. The Swami says the end of knowledge is love. How is knowledge and love related? And why is love the ultimate knowledge? This is a very simple phrase of 5 words, but it's quite powerful. It's also quite revealing. To set the context for this quote of Swami, I want to take you back to the life of Sai Gita, Swami's pet elephant. There was one time when Sai Gita broke from her quarters. She broke the chains and also opened the door to her pen and went on to the highway leading the road leading away from Parthi into the outskirts. And she stood in the middle of the road to block the progress of Swami's car that was coming. She stopped Swami's car from moving, and how much ever anybody tried to get Sai Gita to move away from the road and allow Swami's car to pass, it was not going to happen. She stood firm. Even more, she pushed the car back with her trunk, in effect telling Swami to go back into the ashram. Swami got out of the car and lovingly pleaded with Sai Gita to let him proceed, but she would not have it. She stood firm, even with Swami pleading with her, she would not move. And finally, I'm not sure how long this drama went. Swami went back into the car, made a U turn, and the car went back to the ashram inside Prashanti Nilayam. Swami then revealed that she knew that Swami was upset at that time with the students of the institute. And he had decided not to tell anyone and leave and go to Brindavan. And Sai Gita knew this was the case, that Swami was upset, and therefore he was leaving and going to Brindavan. So, how did she know? How did Sai Gita know what's on Swami's mind? And I'll submit to you that when there is this pure love, you know what the other person is, what they're thinking. And it's in everyone's experience that our mothers know us much more than we know ourselves. And it's the same principle at play. If you really love something or someone, you pretty much know a lot, if not everything, about that person or that subject. And this is true if you truly love something, be it music, be it any subject, you would know everything about it. Right? That's what I took away from this quote, that the end of knowledge is love, and love is the ultimate thing that leads us to complete knowledge. Now, whatever it may be, love is the single most important ingredient in whatever we do, in whatever interactions we have, whatever relationships we build, everything we do, and so on. And if you take this sentence, you can fill the blank with almost anything, and it would be true. It's one ingredient that we simply cannot do without. I want to share a few anecdotes to illustrate this point. There was once a lamp cleaner in a city, and his duty was to climb up the ladder and clean the street lamps every day. It's the most mundane of mundane duties that he was executing every day. And he would do so with so much of dedication that it was like an act of worship. He used to sing glories to the Lord and say, "Oh Lord, I'm cleaning this lamp for you. Make it shine brightly." And this was a simple song on his lips as he went about his task of cleaning all the lamps in the street. As things would have it, the king of the place, of the country, would sometimes go disguised out into the city, into his capital city, just to just to get a sense of how things are. And one day he found that this street was shining so brightly than any other street in his city. He was intrigued, so he called the mayor of the city and said, "What is so special about this street? Did we install new lamps? Is that why this street is shining so brightly?" And he said, "No, we haven't put any new lamps in this street." So the king went back the second day. He hid himself, although he was disguised, just to see how these set of lamps were shining so well, so brightly, and so beautifully. And he found this man who was in charge of cleaning the lamps going about his task with the act of utmost sincerity and dedication, with the Lord's name on his lips, and doing this as an act of worship. So he realized the power of purity, the power of worship. We were suffused with so much of love for the Lord. And those qualities transferred to the lamp and made it shine brightly than, than all other lamps in the city. That's the power of the single most important ingredient. This is a picture of a famous violinist called Joshua Bell, and he plays a violin that was made in the 17th century by this very famous violin maker called Stradivari, Anthony Stradivari, who made each violin with so much of love and dedication that for him, this was an act of offering to the Lord himself. Therefore, he would spend 1 year to make one violin. His friends told him, are you mad to spend so much of time to make one violin? This is not the means of earning a livelihood. But he would not listen or pay heed to these arguments. And he merrily spent a year each to make one violin. So in all his life, he could make roughly about 50 violins or maybe even less. But they have stood the test of time. They are valued even today. And they are the most sought after violins by, by the topmost violinists anywhere in the world. Nobody makes those kinds of violins anymore. Uh, each violin, I heard, retails for a little over $3 million because they are so, so, so special. Because the love and dedication with which it was made has made these violins, if I may say, immortal as well. Right? So here's another story. This is about a very wealthy Arab and his 17 camels. He knew that his time was up and he was going to pass away sometime soon. So he gathered his three sons and said, he's going to split the inheritance, the 17 camels, amongst the three of them. And it was his wish, which was as follows: that his first son gets half of the 17 camels, the second son gets a third of the 17 camels, and the third son gets a ninth of the 17 camels. Now, if you do the math, it's hard to split without killing a camel. Soon, the father passed away, and the siblings were in a quandary as to how to split the inheritance as per their dad's wish. And luckily, a wise man, a wise Bedouin, passed by. He saw that these siblings were in trouble because they couldn't share the inheritance as per their dad's command. So they requested him to help. He looked at the situation and added his own camel. So now it became 18 camels. So half of 18 is 9. So the first son got 9. 1/3 of 18 is 6. So the second son got 6 camels. And a ninth of 18 is 2. So the third son got 2 camels. So 9 plus 6 is 15. 15 plus 2 is 17. So he split those camels and then he took his camel with him. Right? So the moral of the story is you add love, so that the camel that the Bedouin added is love. So if you bring love into a situation or into a problem such as this, so to speak, metaphorically, we'll always find the solution. A wise man once said, whatever the question or whatever the problem, the answer is always love, right? That's the special ingredient. Now, Bhagwan said, don't be a lover, become love. Don't be a lover, become love. What does this mean? A lover and a beloved connotates duality, that there is two entities that have love between them. And he says, become one, become love. And that's the supreme, right? So to illustrate this, let me share a couple of anecdotes. One is, we know from the Ramayana that Bharata, Rama's brother, having separated from him because Rama went off to the forest, spent all his time thinking about Rama and spending his time. So when Rama returned from the forest, the citizens of Ayodhya could not distinguish between Rama and Bharata. They looked so much alike in form. So this is becoming Rama, because he thought so intensely, with so much of love, with so much of purity. He in fact became Rama, not only in form, but also in substance. Right? So this is what becoming love means to me. So too with Hanuman, with his proximity to Sri Rama, and with the devotion and the dedication and the spirit of service that he had, he became Rama himself, in the sense that he is today revered and worshipped all over the world because of this divine qualities that he has imbibed. I will most humbly submit to you that this is what Bhagwan means, perhaps, when he says, don't be a lover, become love, meaning become God Himself. And God is love. Love also has this quality of selflessness. It puts others before the self, and there is no thought of the self at all. The self is lost in this notion of love. Right? Lord Krishna once pretended that he has a very terrible headache, and he sought some remedy. So the devotees around him brought medications. None of that would help. He finally said, bring me dust from the feet of a devotee. Nobody, nobody wanted to part with dust from their feet. They thought it was sacrilege to even think about it. When Gopikas knew about this, they very readily parted with dust from their feet because they could care less. All they wanted was for their Krishna to get rid of his headache and become his usual self again. So there is this supreme quality of selflessness that comes with love. It's prompted by love and it's blind, as we discussed earlier, to any distinctions or distinctions of any kind or any sort of inhibitions, if you will. It has only one purpose: to keep the object of love happy. Now, Bhagwan once said that his love is that of 1,000 mothers. It's hard enough to understand love. It's very hard to understand a mother's love sometimes, but we can all experience the pure love from the mother. In low resource countries, they use what's called kangaroo care. There is no neonatal intensive care units available in low resource settings. So, to save the infant born prematurely, they would put the baby, the newborn baby, and the mother skin to skin on the chest. This results in lesser mortality for the prematurely born child. That's how powerful the mother's love is. That's how powerful mother's touch is, that it saves the baby's life. And I'll submit to you that this is the power of the mother's love. And I experienced this overwhelming love of Bhagwan. I was fortunate enough to do that, to have that experience in my formative years. As I said earlier, I came from a family that was exposed to Swami, and I grew up not questioning his divinity. However, in practice, I lacked. My mother would tell that I treat the home like a hotel. I would come home from school and go directly to my room and come into the living room or the dining room for meals and then go back. And off I would go in the morning back to the school and so on. I would hardly have much conversations, meaningful or otherwise. And I went about my business as any typical unruly teen, if you will. But come Sundays, I would rush to do service, to do Narayan Seva, because I get to do this, meet my buddies, etc., etc. I would not miss that on Sundays. So as things would have it, I had a chance to serve inside Sundaram, where Swami stays when he visits Chennai. And one fine morning, I had the blessed task of swabbing the floor near Swami's room. This was not a easy task by any stretch of imagination. We didn't have the long poles and other gear to squeeze the water out of the mop. So it had to be hand squeezed, rinsed in a bucket of water with disinfectant poured in, and you rinse, clean, repeat, rinse. So you go through the cycle as you mop the floor. So I was down on my knees mopping the floor, and I was sweeping the floor like the wiper blade in our cars would sweep the windscreen, going from left to right, right to left, and so on. And as I moved the mop from left to right, the mop landed close to Swami's feet. Unknown to me, he had entered the room. And as soon as I saw him, I went up on my knees, and he had this to say. He said, "Look how you're working here, but at home, you hardly lift a finger. Of what use is this?" And he kept repeating this as he went away into his room. If somebody else had said that, it would have probably entered my left ear, gone through my right ear. However, the love with which it was said, the concern with which it was said, struck a chord. And that led to some transformations at home. And my mother was all the more happy for that. So that's the power of selfless love to to affect change in behavior, much as the rosebud that was touched and blossomed, so too Swami's love, Swami's words spoken with the love that it exuded, made made found its mark and led to some transformations that has continued on. And I'm still a work in progress. There's much more to do, much more to learn, and much more to transform. But he put me on that path that continues to this day, for which I'm eternally grateful. So I'll wrap up with this lovely story from the Bible. It's a parable. Once there was a beggar who spent all his life begging for alms. And one day, a wise man came to him and said, "Dig where you're sitting." He took those words to heart and started digging and found a big chest of gold. The moral is that we look for so much in the outside world, whereas we're sitting on a treasure chest, the treasure chest of love of Swami within us. And if we only go inside and dig, we'd be all the more richer for the better. This is a quote from Pierre Teilhard. is a French Jesuit priest. He said, "Someday, after we have mastered the winds, the waves, tide, and gravity, we shall harness for God the energies of love." Perhaps he had realized the power of love, which was far greater than the winds, the waves, the tide, and gravity itself. It has the transformative power to change us and to change all whom we come in contact with. Swami says, "You must therefore try to understand my real nature. You develop faith in the Atma Tattva. From faith comes love. When faith and love go together, thus, your desires will be fulfilled. Both faith and love are most important for a human being. All others are like passing clouds which just come and go in between. You should not attach much importance to them. In fact, faith is the reflection of love, and love is the very form of God. Hence, love is God, live in love." So, with these words of Bhagwan, I offer these reflections at his lotus feet and turn it over to Sister Vijayashree.
Hi, Ram brother. That was so beautifully done. You touched upon so many nuggets, so many facets of love. Like one time Swami said, love is like the diamond. So literally, you showed all the different facets of that diamond very, very beautifully.
Thank you, sister.
Especially when you were talking, the story of Joshua Bell, that experiment that was done many years ago. That was a favorite experiment that I had read. As I told you, I used to teach Balvikas as well. And I've shared the story with my class many times, I think.
Yeah, it's a beautiful experiment.
Yeah, for those of the listeners that may not be aware of that experiment, maybe I'll just quickly touch on it. Sometime in the early 2000s, I think 2005, 2007 or something, Washington Post did a social experiment where they wanted Joshua Bell, who's like a world famous violinist, and as Brother Sanjay said, he was playing on one of the most expensive violins made by Stradivarius, like several $1 million worth violin. But he just had like plain clothes, no concert attire, and just plain clothes, and in front of a subway station on a busy morning, and people just walked past him and he played such exquisite music. And when we watch the video, please, I urge you to go back and put Joshua Bell social experiment violin. You will see this video. Kids will stop and tug at their parents hands to say they want to stop and listen to the music because they can relate to that beauty. Whereas the people are all like walking past, they're all in a hurry to go catch the next train, go on to with their jobs and work and, like their day to day mundane things. Even though the same man with the same violin had played a sold out concert in a very prestigious hall in DC just a couple days earlier, right? So this experiment was done and the results were published just to show people that how sometimes just the environment or the context or our perceptions can cause us to devalue the extraordinary beauty in ordinary settings. So we have to be so conscious of it. God has blessed us with extraordinary beauty all around us all the time. Our job is only to keep our eyes open, keep our minds open, so we can receive this love, receive this beauty all around us. So we're not blind to it, you know. So thank you so much again
Absolutely, absolutely.
about it. You know, sometimes we need these memory joggers. So I really, the
Yeah,
other thing which I,
it's a lovely experiment for sure.
it was a beautiful experiment, yeah. And all of us have to remember it. And like Mother Teresa said, it's not like you have to do extraordinary things. Just do ordinary things with extraordinary love. And then you've done your job.
Yeah,
So we have to remember. I
yeah.
can't play violin like Swabel, but I can do whatever I do with some love. And then I'm already doing better than what I was before.
Yeah, so since you mentioned Joshua Bell, I don't know if you had a chance to look at his TED talk on classical music.
Oh, I
It,
haven't watched his talk. No.
so it's a very recent TED talk.
Okay.
It's from Vancouver.
Ah,
So he has brought in an ensemble of Vancouver youth to play really complex music.
mhm.
It's all done in like 15 minutes. It's beautiful.
Right.
If you have a chance, I
I
urge you to take a
thank
look.
you. I will definitely watch it. Yeah. The other thing that also touched, and I could relate to what you were talking about was how the rosebud blossomed. I don't have a green thumb. I'm also afraid of bugs and worms and so on. So I spend like very minimum time in my backyard. But I have friends who not only work for the community garden and in their own backyards, they grow all these vegetables and fruits and all of that, right? This one particular friend of ours, this family that live here in Dallas, he in a normal backyard, it's not a super big backyard or anything, but every day he chants Gayatri to his plants. All his vegetables, such a bountiful harvest that he gets every season. Not only does he get them, him and his wife, then they take them all out, wash them, dry them, and pack them into bags and bring it and deliver it to us.
Wow.
How much love that is. And so I get to enjoy all of this homegrown, lovingly made. I'm sure they all were listening to the Gayatri. So when I eat it, I'm also getting that spiritual benefit from it. So, this is someone who's doing so much with love right here that I see. You know, I'm sure there are lots and lots of people like that who chant or who sing to their plants and they respond back in kind.
Now I know why the food tasted so good at the national conference.
I know. Really, really. I mean, I totally enjoyed all of your sharing. Thank you again.
Thank you, sister. Yeah, if
Uh,
there's any questions at all, please let me know. And yeah, I
Definitely.
enjoyed as much as you did.
Thank you. So, for those of you that joined, I'm sure you enjoyed it as much as I did. This kind of sharing is for all of us to benefit and all of us to get inspired and connect with Swami. Stop all of our busyness for the evening. I'm sure Brother Sanjay had a very busy day today. I myself also was rushing. But this 1 hour, then we put a pause. We hit the pause button, we sit and we think about Swami, think about his teachings and what we can do in our own small base. So this is why we get together. And as I said, this was the penultimate session for this year. So, the very last one that will come up next month, please be sure to join on the very first Wednesday of December. You're in for an exquisite treat. I'm not going to tell you what that is. If you had read the newsletter too, I had said we will announce it soon. So, you will have to join on the first Wednesday to see how fittingly we will bring it all to a close on the topic of love. Having said that, this month is an extra special month. Swami's 100th birthday is coming soon. We'll be celebrating the Ladies' Day. Those of us ladies are all preparing across the region And across the country, we have been doing lots of Sai 100 initiatives. They're all coming to a close. So it's wonderful, wonderful celebrations starting with Akan Bhajans this coming weekend. And then the following weekend onwards, we will start all of the festivities leading up to Swami's birthday. And of course, in Riverside, in Sai Premanilium, we are going to be having the international conference. Hope many, many of you have already registered. If you haven't, you still have time to register. There is no cost for attending. All you have to do is register so the organizers who have been working very, very hard for the last few months can plan accordingly and make it possible for all of us to have a wonderful, wonderful experience. So let us get together and sing Swami's glory and remember his teachings and try and follow in whatever way, in whether it be service, whether it be through devotional singing, whether it be by reading or study circle, whichever way we choose, whichever tool we choose, maybe all of them. Let us all intensify our prayers to Swami. Thank you again for joining. We will close with Om Shanti and Samasta Loka. Samasta Loka Sukhino Bhavantu. Samasta Loka Sukhino Bhavantu. Samasta Loka Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Sai Ram.